What's good with you YouTubers, truthers, and skeptics alike? Jeff coming to you again here today on Saturday, January 9th. I wanted to hop on here, make this video, talk about a few things, and connect a couple dots. We're amongst a mass censorship right now. They're doing it on so many levels for multiple reasons. I want to draw attention to a couple videos and an individual that has not only been silenced in life, but silenced in his testimony while they're using his creation as a catalyst to push this false agenda. I ain't gonna say false agenda. It's a real agenda, but a false narrative. His name is Kary Mullis, and he's the creator of the PCR test. The PCR test, for those who don't know, it's a polymerase chain reaction, is what PCR stands for. And this is a test they're using to detect. I'm not even going to say it. We'll just call it the sniffles. You know what I'm talking about because everybody's fucking being subjected to it. Okay. I want to read an article that talks about Mr. Kary Mullis, his untimely death, his PCR test, and some details into what it entails. Because you could even do this for yourself at home. Ask a question to Google, and then turn around and ask that same question to another search engine like DuckDuckGo. Because the article I'm about to read you is, I researched and searched it on DuckDuckGo. This was the first article that popped up, and it's called State of the Nation is the web page. And it says, COVID Gate, awfully suspicious that the biochemist Kary Mullis, who invented the PCR test, died August 7th, 2019. Biochemist received Nobel Prize for invention of PCR and attracted controversy for positions on climate change and AIDS. So this dude obviously wasn't scared to speak out, wasn't scared to ask questions against the mainstream, the establishment's narratives. He was a good-hearted person that based all of his pre-reviews that he wrote and he stood behind off of science, real science, not lobbied science, off of real science based off of theories and hypothesis, run studies and experiments to get results and scientifically proven facts. This is what won him a Nobel Peace Prize for his invention of the PCR. So the article is basically breaking down Kary Mullis dies at age 74. Kary B. Mullis, Nobel Prize in Chemistry, died August 7th of pneumonia at the age of 74. He won the 1993 Nobel Prize in Chemistry for his invention of the polymerase chain reaction, PCR, method for copying and amplifying DNA. Copying and amplifying DNA is what the PCR test does. And Mullis invented the PCR method in 1983 as a chemist at Synthes Corporation. The original version of the PCR that Mullis developed used repeated cycles of elevating temperatures to separate DNA strands, which are then copied by heat-stable DNA polymers. Repeating the cycle many times lead to an exponential increase in the quality of DNA. In this way, even traces of DNA can be amplified into amounts that can be easily sequenced or quantified. Now, where did you hear once me mention identifying a viral load, a virus, or diagnosing an infectious disease? Not once. PCR amplification played a key role in Human Genome Project, in which most of the DNA blueprints of one person was sequenced. The quote, the initial scientific goal of human genome projects were actually established before PCR had been a routine laboratory method, says Dr. Eric D. Green, also director of the National Human Genome Research Institution at the National Institute of Health and participant in Human Genome Project. In retrospect, the widespread development of PCR-based method ultimately turned out to be a critical, in many ways essential, for the project's success. PCR also made its mark in forensic science. Prior to development of the PCR, forensic science utilized very awkward and insensitive techniques to identify people from DNA samples, says Bruce McCord, a professor of forensic chemistry at the Forensic DNA Testing. Suddenly, there was no need for radioactivity or chemiluminescent-based detections, as the PCR could produce millions of copies of DNA from only a few cells. Millions of copies of DNA from only a few cells. Beyond his work on PCR, Mullis was also known for his controversial views disputing humans' role in climate change and HIV's role in AIDS. He also was open about taking hallucinogenics like LSD and synthesizing some when in graduate school. Mullis was born in Lenoir, North Carolina in 1944. He received a bachelor's degree in chemistry from Georgia Institution of Technology in 1966 and a PhD in biochemistry from the University of California, Berkeley in 1972. He joined CINUS in 1979. In 1986, he became the director of molecular biology at, I can't even say that word, Extronics. And starting in 1987, he worked as a consultant on nucleic acid chemistry for multiple companies. And that's the end of that article. I wanted to give that breakdown because it kind of gives you some of his background and it kind of explains what the PCR test really is. Now, I have two videos of Mr. Mullis, and the reason why I want to show these two videos, along with another one, on social media, Facebook particularly, I was hitting it hard with this information that I'm about to share with you and I'm about to help break down. I was sharing these videos along with some videos of some other credible MDs that have went to the same prestigious schools as all these people they're putting in the limelight that's saying mask and social distancing and sanitization and illogical science. But what these MDs were doing, they were questioning the narrative and they were breaking down the science behind their illogical mandates. But my point, I want to share the first video. This is Kary Mullis. In this video, let me add, these two videos I'm about to share with you have been scrubbed from all the mainstream social platforms, Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and even they're going right now. They're currently going after like Parler, because as of yesterday, Parler was given a 24-hour notice from the creator, from the one that was carrying their app, which is owned by Apple. So Apple ultimately gave this ultimatum to Parler that you got 24 hours to start pulling certain videos, certain information, or they were going to close it. They were going to shut it down. But let me get to this video. I just wanted to make the point on how they're doing this on multiple platforms all across the board. So it's not like this is just one area, one place, one thing. This is multiple things on multiple platforms that the masses use. This is how the masses are able to communicate with each other and share information that's not being put in the MSN or the MSM. So let's get to this video. And you like my little assistant here, my Buddha? Funding is being done by people who don't understand it. Okay, guys, did you catch what the hell he was saying? He's calling Fauci out. He's calling out Fauci's cronies. He's calling out lobbied science. He's calling out how the PCR test cannot detect viruses. And I'm about to share another video with you to get a little more into details in regards to that. But I wanted to share this video because he basically just fucking told you they're engineering this illusion in front of us. They get to change the rules whenever the hell they want. They get to push whatever mandates they want, regardless of the science behind it. Because the people in charge are the ones funding. They're having, I mean, there's a lobbying going on. There's special interest. There's all these different corruptions, which is my point behind, if you watch any of my other videos, you realize that I've been talking about this for a long time. Lobbied science. Synthetic chemical-based industries, and how they've removed nutrition from our education to our applications. It's, you go to the hospital, not a single nurse or doctor, unless they've done it on their own terms, which is very rare, can identify symptoms of deficiencies, of malnutritions. And even if they can't identify them, to know the right foods and minerals to tell you to eat to compensate, to get your body back balanced. But the polymer chain reaction, he says, Fauci thinks that you can put a blood sample under an electron microscope and identify a virus. You can't. That's not what the test is for. Just like, and I quote, Kary Mullis said, it doesn't tell you if you're sick. It doesn't tell you if you're sick. Let me just jump right back into this next video. Let's see if I can get this to play without lagging on me. But first, I want you to ask yourself this. How come they removed that last video? How come they scrubbed that from all these platforms? BitChute is the only website that I found that still has all these videos, these interviews of not only Kary Mullis, but all these other doctors that are speaking out against the narrative. Why are they not, if this is misinformation, why don't they prove it scientifically? They can't. That's the point. Look into what I'm putting out here right now and you will see it for yourself. Come on. Okay, people, did you just catch that? He was just telling you that the test doesn't tell you if you're sick. And the point in fact is, all that test does is amplifies genetic material, which is RNA. RNA creates DNA. And they use, answer me this, why do they use what they call the antigen test, the test for antibodies, but they only check your blood for that? While the PCR, they take it from a mucus sample. So they can only detect viruses in mucus and antigens in blood. No, that's they're intentionally doing it that way to confuse the masses. So they don't see that they're using the same fucking test on different bodily fluids, that if they compare the pictures, the microscopic pictures, like what Kerry Moss was talking about, an electron microscope is what they're using to look amplification. They're zooming in on natural material that is in the blood. Tell me why, or do this experiment for yourself. Look up the microscopic pictures and use their websites or their establishments on their websites to pull these pictures from. I've done this for over a year now, and I've been asking all these microbiologists. I took all these different images of the different viruses, the microscopic pictures, not theorized models created on a computer. Microscopic pictures, the images that are seen with their naked eye, put them next to each other. Make a collage of all these different viruses, and then these viruses counter antibodies. And then look up exosome cells and look up extracellular vessels and their microscopic images. Add those into the collage. Take all the names away from them, and then you ask any microbiologist or anyone in those fields, an immunologist, virologist, epidemiologist, anybody that's within microbiology, and you have them identify the difference, what is what. Because I'm going to tell you right now, they can't, because they're all identifying the same fucking thing and calling it something else. This is all a confusion, a tactic to confuse the masses, to push their fucking synthetic chemicals and their agenda. Just like Kerry said, if you take apples, a bunch of apples, right, and you put something that looks like an apple within it, you could confuse that for an apple. That is what it's like looking under the electron microscope at genetic material in our blood. Because exosome cells are solely responsible for creation of antibodies and creation of viruses. You do not contract a fucking virus. A virus is not alive, just like an antibody is not alive. It is created by the body for a purpose. And it all has to do with bacterial environment, like what I was mentioning a minute ago, with them removing nutritional education. How come we don't hear any of the microbiologists or the immunologists or the virologists or the epidemiologists? How come we don't hear them ever talking about Candida albicans or prebiotics and probiotics or toxins? Or how come we don't hear them ever talk about the natural detoxification process of our bodies, where we're able to flush these systems out? But let me explain. Exosome cells. These are genetic material. This genetic material is created by white blood cells. And they're created for the sole purpose to absorb foreign particles and contaminants that shouldn't be within our body. The toxins and all the different bullshit that we're subjected to, so many different avenues. But what these exosome cells are solely designed for is to absorb contaminants, things that shouldn't be there. And when these exosome cells become contaminated, they're going to mutate. And what they mutate into depends on the bacterial environment that's surrounding it, that it has to feed off of. Now, if you eat an alkaline diet, a majority plant-based diet, the fermentation process of the foods you eat create a hydrogen-rich bacteria that resonates with the body. It works in harmony with the body. It's called prebiotics and probiotics. Prebiotics is what feeds the probiotics. Probiotics is what creates antibodies. So probiotics and prebiotics, a hydrogen-rich bacteria, is the bacteria these contaminated exosome cells have to feed off of. They're going to create an antibody. And that antibody, RNA, teaches the body immunity to that contaminant. That's RNA creating DNA. Now, our problem is what the establishments aren't addressing. none of the mainstream bullshit is talking about it, is the fact that we eat a highly acidic diet. So the foods we're eating, when we eat these foods, they create an acid-based bacteria, an acidic bacteria, and it's called Candida albicans. And it does not resonate with our body. Our body identifies it as something that shouldn't be there. So when we have these toxins and these solvents that's polluting our body, contaminating these exosome cells, and the bacterial environment around it is an acidic bacteria, it's going to mutate into what we know as a virus. And a virus is solely created to flush our body from contaminants and acidic properties, which stems from the fucking food we eat. Candida albicans. So what happens? Why is the virus created? Because it doesn't have the bacterial environment to create antibodies. So it creates a virus. And when we have a contaminant and it creates and mutates this contaminated exosome cell into a virus, it compromises our mucous membrane to coat around this virus to help, almost like a lubrication, to flush this shit out of us. And this is why we get these symptoms of being sick. When our temperature rises and we start sweating, why phlegm builds up in our throat, why snot builds up in our nose, while fluids build up in our lungs, while our stomach creates all this stomach acid. This is all compromising of the mucous membrane. This is all different built-in defensive mechanisms to flush the body from these contaminants. This is what they're failing to teach us, y'all. This is the fucking truth. It's been over 7 years since I've been sick. And this is the purpose. Research this stuff. Look into Kary Mullis. Look into these. Watch these videos multiple times over. Look through BitChute. Spelled BITCHUTE. This platform has all these videos that's being censored from all the mainstream because they don't want us knowing this. I mean, and we're even, look how Twitter, an open public social media platform, can censor the president? How is that even possible? How can you put a mute button on the fucking president? Not saying I support Trump, because I don't buy into none of those circuses, politics. I don't even buy into the sports and bullshit no more, because it's all a diversion tactic to keep us from asking these questions on this information I'm talking about right now. So people realize with real eyes the real lies. He who controls the information molds the minds in formation. You have a cognitive brain. Ask questions. Seek answers. Because when you ask, you shall receive. Realize that knowledge is key. Your health is your foundation. Your belief is your success. And your wisdom is power. We have to wake up to this shit. We have to wake up to it now. Because this mass censorship, I'm on a fucking 7-day Facebook ban. And I guarantee when I get back, they're probably going to hit me with another ban real quick. And I believe it's a 30-day ban after the 7-day ban. So they want me quiet right now because of what I'm saying. Just like they're cutting it all across the board through all these media platforms. Not to even talk about fucking mainstream news programming. Because they've been owned and compromised. They're turning the social media platforms into the mainstream platforms. Monopolized narratives and information. So wake up and realize, guys, because they got this vaccination coming down the pipeline, and I'm not even going to dive into the deep depths of this shit. Because when you look up the ingredients, And don't look it up on Google, or you can look it up on Google, but after you look it up on Google, look it up on an unbiased platform, search engine, like DuckDuckGo, because you're going to get a whole different search result, and you're going to get a whole bit of different information, unbiasedly. Stop putting blind faith in the establishments. Blind faith leads to needless suffering. Ask and ye shall receive, you guys. Realize this vax ain't no good for us, because they're not addressing the root causes to all of our fucking plaguing health statistics, our issues, the cancers and diseases and disorders, and it's all mirrors of illusion, because they're controlling the information and they're engineering the social structure and psychologically conditioning the minds. We are exactly what they want us to be, but we are amongst an awakening process. The game's changed. They know this, and this is why they're trying so hard to censor this information. All they want, they're speeding up their time frame and their agenda on this mass vaccination. And they're silencing Trump because they're scared he's going to speak out right before stepping down. They're all scripted. Trump's script, his main agenda, his main motive was to keep the populace content and get the 5G system up and running. They're scared of him right now. This is why they're censoring him across the platforms and stopping him from being able to speak out. All right, guys. I'm going to end it on that note. Knowledge is key. Your health is your foundation. Your belief is your success. And your wisdom is power. And let me add, if YouTube drops, closes, deletes my account, find me at BitChute. King Righteous and the Unbiased Truth. Because why they make stop me on their platforms, you ain't gonna shut me up. And even if worse comes to worse and they silence me in this physical form, I've done planted seeds in the minds of masses, and they're going to continue to grow, and they're going to continue to drop seeds into the next generation. They cannot silence the truth, regardless. So, knowledge is key. Your health is your foundation. Your beliefs are your success, and your wisdom is your power. I hope all create blessed days for themselves, and I hope all become enlightened to their greatest God-given abilities. I love you guys. One love.